Good morning and welcome back to Citizen TV's Cheche, the program where opinion counts. I'm Udwaka Mimo. Now, the last time we were in the Cheche studios, we focused on the political pacts that had just been sealed, or so we thought. In the 2 weeks since, we've seen one presidential hopeful flit from one alliance to another, and we're also seeing what appears to be the disintegration of another, the Jubilee Alliance, which brought together the National Alliance Party, or TNA, of Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto's United Republican Party, or URP, Najib Balala's Republican Congress, and at the very last minute, Musalia Mudavadi's United Democratic Front. Well, William Ruto, the Eldoret North MP, is our guest in Cheche today. Also in the Cheche studio, our resident panel of Citizen TV's Mutegi Njau and political analyst David Makali. Good morning and welcome to the program. Now, you were chuckling away when I was talking about the disintegration, but clearly things seem to be falling apart for your Jubilee Alliance. Why?
Well, Woodwork, I first want to say good morning.
Good morning and welcome to the program. You know.
I don't think that things are that bad. Yeah, they're not that bad. This is politics, and in politics, it is not done until it is done. And therefore, what you're witnessing is the making of a coalition. There will be push and pull before finally it settles down.
Let me get some opinions
I think
here so far.
These two gentlemen so far have had their say. I mean, Uhuru Kenyatta has said his piece, Musalia Mudavadi has said his piece, and each one of them have said that despite those issues, they're willing to move ahead with the coalition.
David, what do you think? Okay. Because hang on, we hear Uhuru Kenyatta saying the devil made him agree to cede the presidency. I mean, the presidential flag bearer slot to Musalia Mudavadi, and then we see Musalia Mudavadi, you know, petulant. You agreed to give this to me. Why are you reneging on that promise? Is that making sense? And we're told this is coalition building, given that this has already been signed and deposited with the IEBC.
I think what that means to me is that I mean, this coalition of Jubilee is not being formed of like-minded people as such, as we've been made to believe by, you know, Mheshimiwa here and his colleagues, but it's being coerced. They're being coerced to work together by subtle, you know, forces behind them.
Known as the devil.
Yes. Now we've come to know a devil. But clearly, it is beyond their own discretion to be together. And I think that even as Mheshimiwa says they're going to be together, they're not going to be together because they're willing, but because the force that is behind them is not going to let them disintegrate. That's how I see it.
My view is this. Even if you go to history, the history of the formation of UDF, UDF was concocted not by Musalia Mudavadi. Mudavadi was called to head the organization. So the same forces that formed UDF are the same forces that are forcing this situation. That's the same devil we are hearing about.
Well, I think that those are your views, and,
Yes.
I don't think you have any basis for those arguments except for what you have read or heard and that kind of thing. But let me tell you this. Talking about like minds, you know, I think by any stretch of imagination, we have a much more nearer ideology to each other in the Jubilee Alliance than our competitors. I mean, if you were to be honest,
I agree with you.
If you were to be honest, I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
But this is Kenya. We are a fairly young democracy. I think even the coalition making, we are actually doing it for the first time. You know, a pre-election coalition under the law. You know, initially they were MOUs. You know, but today we have a firm legal framework under which to pin these coalitions. And it's important that as we make these initial steps, you know, we are chatting, we're actually trailblazing, you know, doing it for the first time. And I'm sure as we move ahead, as we develop our democracy, it will improve and things are going to change. And those who will come after us will learn a thing or two and they will not be making the mistakes that
Just a minute, in what sense do
time.
you say that your ideologies overlap beyond the obvious commonality that you and Uhuru Kenyatta are facing charges at the International Criminal Court?
I think we have worked, especially, well, myself and Uhuru Kenyatta have worked together for a very long time. I mean, we worked together in the Mama and Baba party. We worked with Musalia then. Of course, we worked with even Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka, even in that Mama and Baba party. I have worked longest with Uhuru Kenyatta. And therefore, I can say there isn't by any stretch of truth. You cannot say that the Jubilee Alliance is any different from the Quad Alliance in terms of who has worked with who or not worked with who likes who and who does not like who. I mean, that is really something that we cannot quite, with a lot of science, say it is true.
What the difficulty?
I would like to go back to the devil thing. Isn't it true, you're saying this on my opinion, isn't it true that there is pressure, like Mkali said, for you to call it, to cooperate, in the sense that when Uhuru was talking the other day, he was talking about Americans, Europeans, please let Kenyans choose their own people. Isn't that true, a fact that there is pressure for Uhuru to step down?
Well, let me say this. When I made a conscious decision, to support the candidature of Uhuru Kenyatta, I was not pressurized by anybody. I made that decision. I consulted widely, consulted my constituency, consulted my party, I consulted everybody that I thought was important for me to consult. And I persuaded them. I mean, I cannot tell you that it was, like this. I mean, it took time, and people asked questions, and people wanted to know, and people wanted, an explanation. And I did that. And finally, I managed to persuade the critical mass initially. And finally, I think I managed to persuade my team, my party, to support the candidature of Uhuru Kenyatta. As you have put it correctly, Uhuru Kenyatta then told me that, asked my opinion, whether it would be okay for us to support the candidature of Musalia Mudavadi. And I told him that would be fine with me, as so long as that was his decision. He told me then he had consulted with some people, and these people whom he had consulted were supposed to do certain things in terms of, once he made the decision, and look at it, lady and gentlemen, look at it. You have William Ruto. Many people, I'm sure, including Makali here, would not have believed that the constituency that I come from would easily support the candidature of Uhuru Kenyatta. That's a fact, But it took leadership and time to persuade them that, and my reasoning was this, we have had a standoff in this country for a very long time between the people of Central Province and the people of Rift Valley. And in fact, this thing came to a head in 2007. And quite honestly, as leaders, I mean, rather than watch a situation and bloodshed and destruction of property, we decided, and I took time and discussed with Uhuru Kenyatta, and we said, I mean, for whatever it is, and even if we don't achieve anything else, even if we don't win, let's do one thing for our country. Let us try and create a political formula that will bring healing and unity in this country, and especially the communities that have been warring for a long time. And that is what eventually persuaded my constituency to agree that much as we have fought, much as there's been bloodshed and destruction of property, it must take men and women, to put this together and put it behind us, right? And I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that once that decision was made, to me, it really matters, of course, a lot, but it's not a matter of life and death that we win this race. If we can have a peaceful election, because we have crafted a political formula that makes sure that communities are comfortable with each other, we will have won in many ways. Now, progressing from there, when Uhuru Kenyatta, and I want to say, in absolute good faith, said that maybe we could progress this further. We have now overcome the jinx that, one, communities in Rift Valley cannot support those in Central Province. Two, it's not possible for a Kikuyu again to become president. I think we had overcome all those. Maybe it's time to take it even further and say, why don't we support Musalia Mudavadi? So, good idea, right? And we started the process of making that happen, Of course, under the leadership and stewardship of Uhuru Kenyatta. Unfortunately, the people Uhuru was working with, who were supposed then, after Uhuru Kenyatta agreed with Musalia Mudavadi, to do what it takes to make sure that this agreement is carried through. Because it's one thing to make an agreement, and that was made between three gentlemen, This election is not about three gentlemen. It's about millions of other Kenyans. It's about political parties. It's about people who have a stake. And just 1 minute would work. Let me just conclude by saying that did not happen. And therefore, there was a challenge, right? And because there was kind of resistance and let me call it a rebellion from a constituency that was critical towards making this happen, it became necessary then to sit down and say, guys, how do we make this move forward? And that is how, from an agreement, it became necessary for us to relook at how to carry this forward in a way that was going to involve a buy-in process. A buy-in process from especially the critical constituencies that would eventually make this happen. And that is how now you find there is consensus versus delegates and that kind of thing.
Okay,
I must that it will take a lot of leadership, and I'm sure we do have that kind of leadership to still make this happen.
Well, you explain it almost accurately to the point of my knowledge, except that your account is a bit different from the one that Uhuru gave to the delegates yesterday.
Yeah, okay.
Because he alluded to pressure, to people telling him that if you take this thing, we're going to lose foreign, international support. Our commodities will not be accepted in Europe because of the sanctions, which is the pressure of the devil that Mutegi and I are talking about. In your account, there is no mention of that. You are trying to make this look like it was on your own volition. It was on Uhuru's own volition, which it wasn't. That there is external and underground pressure to force you together.
Let me tell you, Mutegi and Makali. For one, I am sure that there is no pressure from outside. At least on any one of us. The people Uhuru may have been consulting may have, of course, brought out many other issues. Well, I'm not privy to that discussion, right? However, the principle is what I bought, the principle. And I want to say, when Uhuru Kenyatta mentioned to me this, I thought he was going to really stand tall, when this happens. And I believe that deep down in Uhuru Kenyatta, he wanted this to happen. If he didn't want this to happen, he wouldn't have put his signature on a piece of paper. That tells you the level of commitment Uhuru Kenyatta had towards, expanding this Jubilee coalition and bringing on board Musalia Mudavadi, other Kenyans, so that we can truly have a broad-based government.
The reverse argument could also be made, because if he put his name to this agreement, and after a rebellion breaks out, he then goes on national television to claim that the devil made him sign that. I mean, surely this is a person who blows the wind.
You can understand where he comes from. He made this deal with other people. Those other people were supposed to do certain things.
Then why
when
didn't
they
he say
fail,
that?
when they fail to do those other things, then he begins to think within himself, or maybe these people set me up so that I can sign something which they then go ahead and frustrate to make him look bad. And you can
Then
understand
he should
it.
call them out. The option is to call them out rather than going and telling, millions of Kenyans that a grown man, could be made to force something, made to sign something by the devil.
And the rest.
But you see,
and he wants to be president of Kenya, or was putting himself up as president of Kenya.
I mean, look at him. He's human. I mean, he tells you Uhuru Kenyatta is not a stone. I mean, he's a human being. And human beings have feelings. Human beings can be persuaded. He is not a dictator. He could have insisted and said, go to hell. I have nothing to do with expanding this thing for others. William Ruto has chosen to support me. I will go all the way. He would have chosen to say that. But look at the flip side. He is saying, good, I seem to have reasonable support to win this presidency. But I am willing. As a person.
In fact, that is not true.
Being persuaded by other people to say, okay, let's look at how to expand this. Unfortunately, the way he had the good intentions, it looks like those other people did not have good intention. Because after Uhuru Kenyatta going all the way, when he had the presidency or his candidature very strong, boosted by my support and that of URP and many other Kenyans, he still was willing to cede it to Musalia Mudavadi, but other people, not as committed as he was, undermined that process.
To put it to you, Ruto, that you know other people. Reason, I would like to put it to you that you're hiding something from us. In the sense that the day you are supposed to come to the day you signed with Musalia Mudavadi, you are supposed to come to Cheche that Wednesday morning. You didn't come, you said to us, Makwere. You took a trip by plane to Mombasa. You met some people. Can you tell us that?
They met the president.
Tell us that.
They met the president.
We're taking Jao. Please,
because
you met the president.
Don't say things that you have no proof.
No. We were told Makwere told us not come here because you are going to Mombasa.
If I met the president, I would have no apology on national television today to say I did not meet him. Let me tell you, yes. I did not meet the president.
But you have met other politicians that said no, and it was...
to meet any politician on any coalition issue. Yeah. I went to Mombasa for a private visit, right?
And when the president was in Mombasa?
But Makwere told us. What
will you do to me if I told you that I met the president? What will you do? You'll do nothing.
You don't know why. No, sir.
Why would I not say?
Okay, let me say
the point he's making. Hang on. The point he's making is that this account that you give to us is fairly palatable, but it feels and it sounds as if there's a lot more cooking in the kitchen. To the extent that when you're supposed to come and talk about your newly formed coalition, it seemed as if, because Musalia Mudavadi was a last-minute addition, and he says that he was waylaid on his way to, was it Uhuru Park? Yes. He was, waylaid at his home. And part of it, had to do with, part of it had to do with your need to respond to the coalition that was being formed on the other side. KCC. You had to, bring a rabbit out of a hat, and you thought it would be Musalia Mudavadi. He was expected to announce that his running mate would be Peter Kenneth.
I don't think waylaid are his words. Waylaid are your words. Okay.
Semantics. It's a matter of semantics.
Okay.
Yes.
Secondly, we had nothing to do with responding to our competitors. Let me tell you, Udwak. This game is a game of numbers.
Ethnic arithmetic.
It is a game of numbers. It's a game of numbers. It's got nothing to do with magicians. It's got nothing to do with miracle workers. It's got everything to do with numbers.
Strategy.
And we have the numbers. we have the strategy to win this election. It doesn't matter how many parties our coalition, our competitors put together. You know, it really doesn't matter.
But you know, Mheshimiwa, that's all stated.
And that is a fact.
No.
It's,
you know,
unfortunately, it's too tough, but it is a fact. You know, and they do understand it. And we didn't need to do anything to the URP TNA coalition to make it win. It is a winner.
You had
what we did was, you know, good gesture. You know, we are citizens of this country. We are in the Jubilee generation, right? And we believe that we can make this even better. We don't want just to win. We want to make it a win that has,
win-win
you know,
situation.
that has broad-based buy-in from the best possible broad spectrum of the country. And that's what we're looking for.
You have told us this morning that it took you time to convince your constituency to accept Uhuru. And then all of a sudden Uhuru comes and says, now we can expand the thing to make it better by incorporating Musalia Mudavadi. How did you expect your constituency now to move and tell them, from Uhuru now we are moving to Musalia Mudavadi? How do you expect them to agree? The same rebellion.
I didn't persuade my constituency necessarily to accept Uhuru. They have no problem with Uhuru. They wanted me to run. And taking Jao, if there are 3 serious presidential contenders in this country, and one of them is not William Ruto, then your calculation is wrong.
Right? I'm not saying that.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, my constituency said, you have a serious presidential contender. Why are you ceding for another person? That's what I had to explain, you know. Uhuru Kenyatta, Musalia Mudavadi, they are all Kenyans, you know, and everybody can vote for whoever they want, right? But if people have chosen to give you their support, and if you're not running, you owe them an explanation. And that's what I was doing. But let me also say this, lady and gentlemen. Look beyond, you know, this. You know, I don't know why people would just want to look at the negative side of this thing. What would you think, really? I mean, was it an act of selflessness for Uhuru Kenyatta, who already looked like he was a front runner, to, I mean, why don't you ask yourself, how did Uhuru Kenyatta then say, let's bring Musalia Mudavadi on board, and I'm even willing to give in so that he can run? I mean, that's
what we are saying, Mheshimiwa. We are saying it's not an act of selflessness. It's an act of duress, because there was engineered pressure to force him down on 2 reasons. One, he has conceded himself in public. You are not agreeing with the man who used his mouth to say it. How? And then secondly, it is not because he was so generous that you guys wanted to let it go to Musalia. It is, as you said, your strategy was not adding up. After it looked clearly.
Did I say that?
The 2 things. First of all, I need to hear it from you again. Are you saying that your constituency had bought, in fact, the ticket of you and Uhuru? We've heard of Achicha, we've heard of, there's a resistance. So I think you guys decided that, look, since there's a resistance here, can we get somebody else who is neutral, who can put all these numbers together without rebellion in our backyard?
I was right.
To be honest.
I was right when I say,
yes,
many people, including Makari, did not believe that it is possible for URP and our constituency to support the candidature of Uhuru Kenyatta. Because many people are steeped and stuck in stereotyping.
With what you said earlier.
Yeah? Yes. That's what I said.
Yes.
And let me tell you, Makali, the people in my constituency bought the idea that they can vote for Uhuru Kenyatta because he's a Kenyan. Let me tell you. And let me also tell you, forget about this demonstration of 20, 30 people engineered by our opponents to make it look like, oh, there is a bit of resistance. That is cheap. Let me tell you, we went to Eldoret. I don't have to say anything beyond that. You saw the kind of support they had, or they demonstrated, not the 20, 30 people who are demonstrating in the street. Hundreds of thousands of residents came out and say, you have made the right decision, let's go that way. I had 5 rallies in the region that anybody would think that would have some resistance. They demonstrated that they were in the buy-in. Let me tell you, Makali. What happened? And I want to tell you that we're going to move this forward. What I see in this is an opportunity for us to, spring and move forward. We have already demonstrated to the country that Uhuru Kenyatta is not a greedy man, as many people would want to believe. Oh, everybody from Central Province, they are greedy for power. Uhuru Kenyatta was willing. If the people on the other side of that discussion...
You're saying was instead of is.
Was, yes.
No, I'm saying he's still willing even today.
Okay.
That's why Uhuru Kenyatta is saying, let us, in fact, the only thing that we have a problem with is the constituency that is saying, okay, you guys may have gone into a room and you may have decided whatever you did, and we have no problem with Musalia Mudavadi. Let us go to a process that is democratic. And Uhuru Kenyatta is saying, fine, I am ready to still carry through this with the participation of a delegates conference. Okay,
so we have to take a break now. You're watching Cheche live on Citizen TV. Our guest this morning is William Ruto, the running mate of Uhuru Kenyatta or Musalia Mudavadi, depending on how on how the leadership dispute is settled. If you have any questions for him, SMS 2442 or tweet Cheche_TV. We've talked a little bit about the old future, whether we believe on what the uncertainty in the Jubilee alliance